All right, but I think we should just get to the last of the bunch, and that is Tokyo Shinobi Squad.
Tokyo Shinobi Squad, the last of the bunch, and certainly the least of the bunch, for sure. Yes, they really save the worst for last. Now, just right away, the premise of the series drew a lot of heads when the first chapter came out for being very startlingly and oddly and weirdly nationalistic, because the premise of the series is predicated on this idea that Tokyo has become the greatest crime center in the world because of globalization, because the Prime Minister of Japan created these railways, super hyperloops that connected the Japan and Russia and China and the US.
And see, because they let all these different people from all these different countries into theirs, all this crime started going up, and all these terrible things started happening, and Tokyo basically became a pretty shitty place to live from here on there. And that's a pretty troubling idea, to say the least.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, so again, the idea that foreigners caused Japan, which considers itself one of the safest countries in the world, to become incredibly crime-ridden, is incredibly problematic. It is not rooted in reality at all. There are so many trolls who make arguments saying, oh no, of course if you opened up immigration, this would happen. But obviously this has no bearing on reality.
See, they should have built a wall, and all their problems would have been solved.
Just thinking about the premise logically, it makes no sense why hyperloops connected to some of the most developed countries in the world would spike the increase of crime in Japan. Even if they were connected to underdeveloped countries, it would be obvious that it would not increase the crime in Japan. But just on that level, it's very strikingly odd that connected to China and the USA and Russia somehow caused Tokyo to become crime-ridden. Somehow caused a bunch of companies to come in and turn businesses corrupt to partner with organized crime, as if that is not already happening already in the underbelly of society all over the world. But also, it just does not make sense, this hyperloops idea, how that has changed anything, because already with planes, people travel all across the world to every country, from every country. Obviously, people come to Japan, and they oftentimes might even move to Japan. It's not like Japan might not have a diverse ethnic population like in the United States, but they have still a population from other countries. They still have immigrants to the country, So it's not like immigration isn't already a thing that is possible in Japan. It's not like planes don't already exist. So how do these hyperloops change anything? These hyperloops have to be less convenient than planes for sure. Are they faster than? It doesn't even make sense. If they are faster than planes, the speed of how people get there doesn't change anything. So this entire premise is formulated on this nebulous idea, this assumption that opening up Japan's borders, that allowing for immigration into Japan will increase the crime. It is predicated on this idea that foreigners are not to be trusted, that foreigners will bring with them crime and upset the natural political order of Japan, the political stability of Japan. It's really rooted in these wrong-headed and completely bizarre ideas that are essentially just based on racism, based on nationalism.
Isolationism, maybe?
Exactly. And even more ridiculous and very bizarre is this idea that, these shinobi are symbolic of Japan's cultural heritage, like Japanese people protecting themselves in their country. Like, I posted a tweet about this on Twitter, but essentially making this comparison, like, that these shinobi have been protectors of Japan for centuries. You know, this would be like if you were to set this series in the United States and with the same kind of premise, you know, you would basically say that these would be cowboys. And essentially the idea here is that it's like this kind of political action group, you know, that is like fighting to keep foreigners out and to like inflict violence on people they are distrustful of. Like essentially those kind of nationalist groups, like in the US, like if you were to write the series, instead of shinobi, you would probably euphemize what these groups would be as cowboys. So that's the connection I was finding there that I found very startling. So like essentially, again, this is like really rooted in like this idea that, you know, the Japan must keep others out, and again is really all rooted in this nationalism and racist ideas that just make the series from the start. It leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth, but then from there it just adds on even more like upsetting elements. Like, it's very misogynistic. There's like a lot of gratuitous violence against women, a lot of gratuitous hypersexuality of women that's very discomforting. And then just the general shonen action elements, like the basic concept of it is very not striking at all. It feels like this generic kind of cyberpunk set premise that have been a dime a dozen in Jump in recent years that we've seen before. The second chapter kind of just goes along with that. It basically restates the first chapter. It doesn't like reference any of the troubling elements, but it basically is like, it kind of shows that the series is really kind of very derivative in a lot of different elements. Like, we've seen this kind of idea of like this secret group that protects like a city from bad guys or whatever. It just doesn't have anything unique or interesting to this idea. Like, this idea of ninjas, they're ninjas because they have, like, superpowers. Like, the main character has, like, electric powers. Like, there's no real connection to the fact that they are ninjas at all, that they're shinobi at all, other than that I guess they have superpowers. So, it doesn't really have much of an identity in terms of thematically, in terms of teaming, or in terms of, like, a unique like idea for its world, other than an idea that is rooted in a very troubling political perspective that has like consequences on real people that are harmful and dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I was only looking forward to actually checking this out just on the basis of like, this was already turning heads last week when it premiered. I don't know, honestly. It's one of those things where it's like, I mean, obviously we've been saying this whole time, but like the entire setup for this series is, again, like you said, rooted in ideas that are legitimately very harmful, and I think we can both say that, you know, we don't agree with at all. And I mean, I don't know, honestly, with how like controversial I had heard that this series started off, I don't know. I was kind of expecting more out of it. I was expecting it to be more shocking, or maybe I'm just desensitized to certain things. I don't know. But, you know, I can't sit here and say like, you know, oh yeah, this totally brought something to the table, because it didn't. There really isn't anything here that I haven't seen from other shonen manga other than this political stance it's taking. I don't know. It really, I liked certain pages and panels, I guess. I liked some of the action, but even then, like, I've seen better action comics, so it's like, I can't say this really gave me anything new. I'm interested in seeing, the most I'm interested in about Tokyo Shinobi Squad is like, whether its political ideas are going to actually be explored later, or if they're basically just a means to an end to set up this world, which I'm getting the feeling that it's probably going to end up being the latter. So I'm not, I want the series to become something more, because I think it could, you know, if it were written better, but like, I'm expecting this to get canceled pretty soon, honestly. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't have high hopes for it at all.
It doesn't really have much of a hook to it. Again, like, it feels very samey to a similar kind of series before. Like, I found the premise of the series weird. Like, that's really all I found. It kind of creep me out a little bit. But, like, as the second chapter is kind of proven, like, it doesn't really have much thought behind it. It's just rooted in this wrong perspective, this very ill-informed perspective. So I don't know, like, how zealous the author is and how committed he's into these ideas. But, like, it already left a bad taste, like, starting off with a premise like that, and it doesn't provide any new interesting ideas to latch onto it.
I will say this, though, that, and I don't know if maybe I'm interpreting this wrong. I could be, I don't know. But the one thing that kind of made me feel better about this series in particular was that it seems like it's the kind of thing where the setting and the story, even with its problematic political statements, like, it doesn't seem like the characters really, I mean, I don't know, it's weird because, like, the beginning of the first chapter has this moment where what's his name? I already forget his name. The main character, where he's like, "Oh, well, so much for globalization, huh?" And it's like, okay, whatever. That's a whole thing in and of itself. But it's like, other than that, like, it doesn't seem like the characters really, like, so much believe in the political statements that the series is making. It feels more like this is their world, and they're just kind of living in it. Like, they're just kind of making the best of it.
I mean, there's some weird moments of casual racism, like when N is, like, trying to pay Jin with the Thai currency bot. Like, he refuses to take the bot because he says, "Oh, bot's not worth it. What it's the paper it's printed on in Japan, but you can get that converted at a convenience store, and any convenience store in Japan will convert it to, like, good Japanese yen or whatever." But when you think about that, like, you know, he's refusing to take this money that he himself could easily get transferred into Japanese currency if he really wanted to. So he has no reason to refuse N's money right there. Like, this to me reads as a means of, like, just being a jerk, looking down at another person's currency from their country, saying, "No, you gotta conform to the way we do things here in Japan. You know, you can't abide by your own, like, rules here. You live in Japan, you have to speak Japanese, you have to do what we want to do, you have to use our currency," all that kind of stuff. It's the kind of casual racism that people use to throw power over another group of people, and very common to see in real life. It's the same kind of sentiment as, "You live here, you speak English," or
yeah, okay,
I won't take my, yeah, so. And again, I don't think the author really thought through that kind of moment, but these are the kind of moments that kind of show to me that the author might believe in some very questionable things that makes me very uncomfortable, puts an unpleasant flavor over the series. It does not, and really makes me incapable of really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. I guess my thing is, like, I disagree with this series wholeheartedly, but it's also one of those things where it's like, I don't know. I was kind of expecting it to be a little more shocking. Like, if you're already gonna dabble in this kind of, like, if you're gonna dabble in this kind of political mindset, like, I don't know, like, go all the way. Like, it just feels really, it just feels really, like, tame and samey, and it doesn't have, like, it's the kind of thing that you would read as, like, I don't know, like a teenager, like a 13 or 14-year-old, and you think, wow, this really has something to say, and oh my god, I feel like such an adult reading this. And then when you get a little older and, like, you revisit it years later, you're like, oh, this actually has, like, nothing to say, and it's all just bullshit.
It's certainly not propagandistic, but it is reflective of real beliefs that, again, can have some damaging consequences on people. And you don't have to look too far back into history to see what thoughts like these can do in terms of real, actual consequences politically. Again, it's also very telling that the villains of the first chapter, they're all foreigners, established as foreigners, and they're based on kind of pop culture figures. Like, you have the black character is called Mayweather. There is a character called Cena who is basically the singer Sia. So,
Oh, and there's a mention of Justin Bieber at one point, and like, that was such a weird thing that like I had no idea what to make of that.
It's pretty random. Even in that bubble, there's also like a "What do you mean?" like in reference to his song. Though the caricature of Bieber does not really look much like him.
No, and it's like there has been more than one incident with Justin Bieber. Unless something happened in the news and I just haven't seen it. I don't know what they're referring to at all.
I think that they are referring to a made-up incident.
Which, I mean, if that's the case, it's kind of random, but it's at least like okay, that's a weird thing, but I guess that's kind of funny, but that's kind of the only thing that got, like, any kind of, like, joy out of me, honestly.
I guess that's the one thing I'd be interested in seeing from the series, what that Justin Bieber incident is.
I want Justin Bieber to be, like, a villain for an arc. Like, I could just imagine, like, this series getting the plug pulled on it, like, 6 weeks before it's supposed to end, and then Justin Bieber just kind of comes in so he can take revenge on the main Shinobi guy. It'd be stupid, but, I mean, it would be something positive that the series could be remembered for, at least. But yeah, this was pretty disappointing.
Definitely one of my least favorite new Jump series in recent memory.
See, I feel bad saying that like Samurai 8 is my favorite, just because like clearly I almost feel like that's not fair to the other three, because it's like clearly Samurai 8 has had way more time for it to kind of like for Kishimoto to like kind of sit down and actually like really think about the world of Samurai 8 and like where he maybe like in general like where he wants the story to go. So I almost feel like it's not fair for me to say like that's my favorite one, but I mean it's my favorite one, so.
Yeah, I mean kind of by a clear mile. Again, it's the most well thought out and sure of itself, whereas the others, they don't really seem to know what a kind of identity they want to carve out for themselves, or they are just following through kind of the stereotypical stories that have already been told like this before, or they have just some other weird problems with them. It's not like Samurai 8 is devoid of like any problems either. It's just, it's generally very well executed, and it seems to be going somewhere. It knows where it's going, so it's easy to get behind it.
Despite its flaws, like, it still has a lot to offer, which I think is good. If I had a gun to my head and I had to, like, pick something out of the three, I would say out of the three, besides Samurai 8, I'm probably the most interested in keeping up with Beast Children, just because I feel like it's the easiest to follow out of the three. And I mean, I do agree that like, the art overall I think could be better, but I think it has the most potential to become better. Whereas the other two I think are just so weird that like they kind of turn me off.
Yeah, I mean, I will keep reading all these series, but I enjoy Samurai 8, and I think that Double Taise and Beast Children could improve and become more enjoyable to me. Tokyo Shinobi Squad, I don't think will ever be able to recover from its initial bad impression and be something that I will really enjoy, but I don't really feel that any of these series besides Samurai 8 have a lot of legs and a lot of strength in terms of like being long-running series. Sustainability, more accurately.
Bit of a downer note, but I think, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our Jumpstart discussion.